Matthew 14, 13 through 21 reads, "Now, when Jesus heard about John, he withdrew from there in a boat to a secluded place by himself. And when the people heard of this, they followed him on foot from the cities. When he went ashore, he saw a large crowd and felt compassion for them and healed their sick. When it was evening, the disciples came to him and said, 'This place is desolate, and the hour's already late, so send the crowds away that they may go into the villages and buy food for themselves.' But Jesus said to them, 'They don't need to go away. You give them something to eat.' And they said to him, 'We have here only 5 loaves and 2 fish.' And he said, 'Bring them here to me.' Ordering the people to sit down on the grass, he took the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, and looking up toward heaven, he gave them to the disciples, and the disciples gave them to the crowds. And they all ate and were satisfied. They picked up what was left over of the broken pieces, 12 full baskets. There were about 5,000 men who ate, besides women and children." When I was studying and prepping for this, initially I actually thought that I was going to be teaching on divorce. And when I talked about that with Adam, who you just heard speak a second ago, he goes, "You don't always have to teach the hard ones, right? Like you can leave those for someone else." But after much prayer and consideration, I'm actually incredibly happy to get to teach such a familiar passage in the scriptures this morning. And for anyone that has grown up in the church, the feeding of the 5,000 is going to be a really, really familiar story to you. And you've no doubt seen it illustrated in children's books and children's Bibles. And, there's always that little cartoon Jesus sitting under a tree, just passing out plates of food to people, and everything is just sunshine and rainbows. And so I know that there's a temptation in reading this to immediately tune out something so familiar. And I know that temptation can be really strong. But I would encourage you to stay with me today, as I believe that the Lord really does have something to share with each and every one of you this morning, as he definitely did me this week through this passage. And this passage is really, really remarkable. At least, and it has been in my own life. The Lord has used this specific passage to minister to me in more ways than one over the years. So much so that I can actually remember the first time I ever taught this, which was to a class of 5th graders when I was in high school in that same children's ministry hallway. But it was so impactful, it's still stuck in my mind and everything that I had learned from it. And the application that I was given then is completely different than the one I'm even teaching this morning. But personal impact aside, not including the resurrection of Jesus, the feeding of the 5,000 is the only miracle that the Lord saw fit to be recorded in all 4 gospel accounts. And being as all 4 gospels were written to 4 different audiences, then there has to be a lot to gain from this miraculous banquet by the sea. And in my experience, there has also always been more to glean from this. So I hope that the Lord blesses you with the hearing of his word today. But especially this morning, those that find themselves exhausted and those that find themselves feeling unsatisfied with what they have to offer. Unsatisfied with what they have to offer the Lord, unsatisfied with what they have to offer their families, with what they have to offer their associates, and those that feel like life has just drained me of every living resource I could possibly have. It's just not even worth it to try to keep up with these things. So if anyone is feeling that this morning, then one, thanks for making it here anyway, and good job, and I hope that the Lord speaks to you. So I'm going to be referencing the other accounts of this passage because each author brings a couple of little details to the table of things they saw fit to record about this moment. So be prepared for a little book hopping, but if you're following in your Bible, it's just going to be quick references. So don't feel the need to oh gosh, John, flip through. So, beginning in Matthew 14:13, it reads, "Now, when Jesus heard about John, he withdrew from there in a boat to a secluded place by himself. And when the people heard this, they followed him on foot from the cities." Now, just before this, it says when Jesus heard about John, John the Baptist, who was Jesus' relative through Mary and Elizabeth, he was just beheaded by King Herod. And the disciples of John the Baptist went and they told Jesus what had happened to him. And immediately after that, this was his response, to take his disciples and get in a boat and go to a secluded place. Now, the exact reason that Jesus and his disciples withdrew in the boat is probably one of two things, or a combination of the two. Either they're getting in there and they're waiting for everything with Herod to blow over, and they're, because often Jesus withdrew when crowds were getting violent or when people were seeking to kill him or so on, or I suppose, they were withdrawing to rest and to grieve and to pray and to spend time with the Father during this time. And based on the way that Mark accounts Jesus' words to the disciples before they leave, I believe it's more the latter than the first. Mark 6:31 says, "And he said to them," this is Jesus, "Come away by yourselves to a secluded place and rest a while. For there were many people coming and going, and they did not even have time to eat." It's a hectic time. It's hectic and it's sad. There's this heavy weight. And even though that Jesus obviously knows that John the Baptist is now with his Father, we do know that death still impacts Jesus, and in a very real way. When Lazarus died, even though he knew that he was about to raise him back from the dead, we still see that he was moved to tears at seeing the broken state of this world. John 11:33-35, it says, "When Jesus therefore saw her weeping, and the Jews who came with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in spirit and was troubled, and said, 'Where have you laid him?' And they said to him, 'Lord, come and see.'" And then 35, we have the shortest verse in the Bible, "Jesus wept." Jesus' compassion for his people allows him to mourn with those that mourn, even with an eternal perspective. And so closely experiencing what sin and corruption has done to his people must break his heart. And at least one other specific disciple probably would have been having great difficulty with this time too, and that's Andrew. Because before following Jesus, he was one of John the Baptist's disciples. And he worked alongside John the Baptist in helping him prepare the way for the Messiah. And then when the Messiah came, Andrew started following Jesus. So this would have been a really difficult time for them. And so much was happening that Mark tells us that they didn't even have time to eat. We just have to get in the boat and go. And so what happens? Well, unfortunately, the world doesn't seem to stop turning even in this difficulty. So they went to go and rest. And they eventually would rest. But before that, the people hear that Jesus and his disciples are leaving to be alone for a while. And what does it say? That they respected their wishes and left him alone for a more opportune time? Nah. They followed him on foot. He's getting in a boat. Let's go around, right? If any of you have kids, you know exactly what this moment feels like. The utter disregard for anything that's happening to you or anything that's happening around you. There was one time where my oldest, Rosie, we're at Sam's Club, right? We're obviously buy everything in bulk because I have a million children. And, we walked in. I thought I was just getting a few things. And then I get text from my wife, "Oh, we need this and this." Okay. So, I'm carrying like a giant pack of paper towels, a bag of coffee that I had ground, creamer, like a pack of toilet paper and eggs. Like, I should have gone back and got the cart, but we're here now. And Rosie's walking next to me, clearly struggling due to my poor choices. And she just holds up her jacket. She's like, "Can you hold this?" "I don't want to." Like, are you kidding me? Really? Can you just tie it around your waist or something like that? Can you tie it for me? No, I can't tie it. Just hold it. But I don't want to hold it. Can't you see what's happening around me? This is not a great time to ask that. Or I remember another morning when something had happened. I don't remember exactly what it was, but my wife, Courtney, something happened to bring her to tears, and I'm standing next to her, comforting her, and I remember Ember, my second oldest, walks up, and I'm comforting Courtney and just rubbing her back, and she's wiping her tears, and Ember just walks up and goes, I'm hungry. Can you make breakfast? The righteous judgment that I wanted to deliver upon this child at that moment. Do you have no awareness of what's happening right now? And and then you have to remember, she's only 3 or however old she was when this happened. They're only 3, they don't know, but you get this. That's the kind of feeling. And it must have been what it felt like, but even to a worse degree, for this crowd to follow them. And whether the crowd didn't know what was happening or they didn't care that they were going to leave to be alone, it wouldn't have been easy to want to meet their needs. And yet, we see Jesus' response. In verse 14, it says, when he went ashore, he saw a large crowd, and he felt compassion for them and healed their sick. And as we'll see, the disciples were not all in the same mindset as Jesus was, but his response is astounding. Spurgeon writes regarding this, he says, his compassion was great. And the original word is very expressive, meaning his whole being was stirred to its lowest depth, and therefore he proceeded at once to work miracles of mercy among them. And not only does he heal those that are sick, but Mark tells us that he taught them many things, and Luke says that he spoke to them about the kingdom of God. And just as an aside, this is just more testament to the fact that ministry never stops. 24 hours a day, people will always have needs that will always need met. They will always need people to pray with or someone to counsel them, and they will always be hungry for the word of God no matter what's happening, regardless of circumstance. Jesus and the disciples could have made any number of legitimate excuses, this isn't the right place, this isn't the right time, a great beloved friend of ours just died. These people can take care of themselves. And certainly, it's not like these people were going to die if they didn't get food right then and there. These people didn't necessarily come expecting food, but Jesus had compassion on them regardless. And it's moments like these that you see that Jesus really shows God's compassion and love for humanity, even in situations like this, when he has every right to say, now is not the right time. So we'll go to verse 15. It says, when it was evening, the disciples came to him and said, this place is desolate, and the hour is already late. So send the crowds away, that they may go into the villages and buy food for themselves. So the disciples begin taking stock of the situation. They're like, okay, it's been a little while. It's probably time to step in. I don't think Jesus is going to stop talking. So they're exhausted. Jesus invited them out here for some rest. They're in some stage of grief, and they still haven't gotten to eat while Jesus is teaching and healing the crowds. And there really is a crossroads here, because while these people eventually need to eat, they also need to hear what Jesus is teaching. Probably more so the latter than the first. In over 5,000 people, it says 5,000 men, not counting the women and children. So it's going to take a while to minister to all of them. But the disciples see, look, we're between a rock and a hard place. This is an impossible scenario, and something needs to be done if they're going to stay here, and something needs to be done if they're going to eat. And they decide it's probably time to push them off into the villages and let someone else take care of that. Jesus, hey, I know you're preaching the kingdom of God here, and you're healing people, but also it's getting really late, and these people have to eat, and so do we still. So maybe it's time we should send them on their way. They can get food, they can find a place to stay, or put another way, Jesus, now is just not a great time. Let's do this another time. Maybe in the morning, people can come back and eat, but not right now. Now is not great. And by now, the disciples know that Jesus can feed them all if he wants to, right? They've seen other miracles, and they know and testify who he is. But if we want there to be, isn't there always a reason why it's not a great time for God to do a work in us? Like, God, I'm too tired to meet with you and read the word. I'm too tired to glean anything from this. I'm just going to fall asleep face first in my Bible. Or God, I'm way too busy to pour into this person. At most, I can give them like 5 minutes, but just forget it. It's not even worth it. I do not have time for this. Or, God, I'm way too worried to stop what I'm doing and pray. Like, there's just so much going on right now. I can't do that. It's not a great time. Or, God, I'm too hungry. I just need to eat. I'm too hungry to focus on anything spiritual. I need to go get something to eat, and then maybe I'll come back, and then, we'll meet and pray, and you can speak to me or whatever you want to do. Whether it's I'm too tired, I'm too busy, I'm too hungry, I'm too worried to do anything meaningful, so I just won't. And if we allow circumstance to decide when God can and cannot do a work in us and teach us, then we'll always be able to find a reason it's not time. Or the enemy will always find a reason for you why it's not a good time for that. Or find a reason to pass the buck. Someone else needs to do this. The disciples saying, send them away. Just have someone else go feed them and give them lodging and so on. It's like saying, look, I know that this person needs to hear about Jesus, but I can't do that very well. You know who can? My pastor. You should set up a time to talk to him instead. He can do that much better than I can. And so I'm betting that the disciples, they give their solution to Jesus, and they're expecting probably one of two answers. Either, all right, you know what? Yeah, it's time to go home. We'll pick this up in the morning. Or, no, wait longer. They and you can wait to eat. Give it some time. We've got a lot to do here. You can wait. You're not going to starve. But instead, they're greeted with this response from Jesus. And Jesus said to them, they don't need to go away. You give them something to eat. And now we're getting to the part of the passage that I really want to begin to hone in on. Because imagine hearing those words at this time. You're staring out into this massive crowd of thousands, and you haven't had a chance to eat yet. Your friend John was just beheaded, and you came out here for peace and quiet. Like, this is what I was expecting. You said come away for some rest, and here we are in front of a crowd of people that need to eat. What on earth am I going to give these people? I haven't even eaten yet. In John 6, 5-7, it tells us that Jesus also specifically asked Philip a question during this time. John 6:5, therefore Jesus, lifting up his eyes and seeing that a large crowd was coming to him, he said to Philip, where are we going to buy bread so these people can eat? And he said this to test him, for he himself knew what he was intending to do. But Philip answered him, he pulls out his, abacus, 200 denarii, or 200 days' wages worth of bread is not sufficient for them, for everyone to receive a little. Philip was from this area, so I think that's probably why he was asked. Jesus is like, hey, where can we buy food for these people around here? Philip's going, are you kidding me? Is this a joke, Jesus? It was a day's wage, a denarius or a denarii, so even if we had over half a year's wages, we couldn't buy enough for even a little bit of food for everyone. But still, Jesus wants these people to stay, and the order's given. You give these people something to eat. So the impossible needs done. And the disciples know that they can't fulfill this, right? And they've even begun thinking about ways that we could maybe technically do this, And they begin looking into their own means of provision and what they have to offer in order to feed these people. And again, they should have been able to know by now that Jesus could meet the need, but instead of asking him, they take stock of the situation, and Philip came to the conclusion that, like, my mind probably would have gone to. I would have started counting the pennies, like, Judas, how much do we have? I don't know. There's like a shop a few miles that way. I mean, I guess if we bring everything and we haul it all back with like 600 other people to haul back all this food, then maybe we could get a little bit of something. It's like, Jesus, we haven't eaten, and we need like 25 grand to give these people a piece of bread. And even then, like, how are we going to haul it all back? How do you expect us to bring back food for all these people from town? We don't have enough any way you slice it. And it's impossible. Though God isn't a stranger to asking people to do things that they are ill-suited for or unable to do. Much like when God told Moses, he said, "You're going to be my messenger before Pharaoh." His response in Exodus 4:10, then Moses said to the Lord, "Please, Lord, I've never been eloquent, neither recently nor in time past, nor since you have spoken to me, to your servant, for I am slow of speech and slow of tongue." But then you look at God's reply to this impossible task. The Lord said to him, "Who's made man's mouth? Or who makes him mute or deaf or seeing or blind? Is it not I, the Lord? Now then go, and I, even I, will be with your mouth and teach you what you are to say." And also Jeremiah, when he's told, "Jeremiah, you've been appointed to be a prophet." Jeremiah says in Jeremiah 1:6, "Then I said, Alas, Lord God, behold, I don't know how to speak, because I'm a youth. I can't do this. I'm not a public speaker. I'm just young." And God's reply, "But the Lord said to me, do not say I am a youth, because everywhere I send you, you shall go, and all that I command you, you shall speak. Do not be afraid of them, for I am with you to deliver you, declares the Lord." Then the Lord stretched out his hand, and he touched my mouth. And the Lord said to me, "Behold, I have put my words in your mouth." And in both instances, you have a task that would be impossible in their eyes, and it's asked of them. And the reassurance that God gives is, "I will be with you. I'm asking you to do this, but I will be with you. And I will give you the words, and I will do the work. And I'm still asking you to do it." If we know that the Lord is leading us to do something, either directly or through the word or what have you, and we feel like we have nothing but these crumbs to offer and we need a buffet, he's usually planning something, just as he was with Philip. Because God desires for us to be involved in his work. And it's part of the relationship that he wants to have with us working alongside him and with him. And it involves us being able to be wowed by seeing what God does in situations like these. And sometimes it's only the smallest act of obedience that's needed when God's hand is in it to make the impossible possible. And so verse 17, they said to him, "We have here only 5 loaves and 2 fish. Or more specifically, in John's gospel, we read how they got those loaves. John 6:8 and 9, it says, "One of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, said to him, 'There's a lad here who has 5 barley loaves and 2 fish, but what are these for so many people?'" In this type of scenario, it's usually reserved for comedy. Like, you give them something to eat, and you look at the swarm of people, and you're like, we need what? Like 30, 40, 50 grand to even get a start on this? Cool. Well, this boy brought his lunch. Will that work? And there's a whole different sermon here about how only one boy out of all these people came prepared to stay and listen to Jesus for a long time. but I'm not going to go into that portion today. The situation stands. These people need fed. Jesus tells the disciples, you feed them. So then what do we do when tasked with being asked for the impossible, or what seems like the impossible? Step one would be, you have to start with what you have. You can't give what you don't have. It sounds like a dumb thing when you say it, but, I can't give you a $100 bill because I don't have one, right? I can't give what I don't have. And Andrew, he could have looked at these 5 tiny loaves of bread and 2 tiny fish and thought them, like, why even bring this up? Why even mention it? It's like, if someone asks you, do you have cash on you? And you're like, oh, shoot. And you reach into your pocket and you feel like a dime, 2 pennies, and a nickel, right? Like, unless you're trying to make a funny joke, your answer is, no, I don't have anything, right? But if you're trying to be funny, you're like, I have, 13 cents? Yeah, I got cash on me, But the answer is, no, I don't, because the amount is so insignificant, why would you even bother bringing it up? So if you're the disciples, or even this kid that brought something, you may look at this and the answer is, yeah, Jesus, there's nothing. We have to send them away. We have nothing. We have nothing to give. In the grand scheme of things, this is nothing. This is enough food for the small boy that brought it, and that is it. And the problem in this scenario is people need food in order to stay and hear. But what other instances could this apply to? Someone is hurting and needs ministered to. Someone is struggling with doubt. Someone's struggling with depression, pornography, addiction. Their marriage is falling apart. And what do you have? What do you have to give? I know how to pray. I got 4 hours of sleep last night. I know some of the Bible. I couldn't quote all the references, but I know some of what it says. That's all I got. But what I need is a marriage counselor, a therapist, a pastor, all here in a row to minister to this person. But you don't have that in this scenario. Someone's coming to you for help, and you can't send them away to get help. I can't talk to you about this. You need to talk to someone else. God's placed you there for a reason. You give them something to eat. Or maybe in a more personal scenario, the Lord wants to grow you. He wants to nourish you. He wants to mature you in your faith. And he wants you to learn to rely on him more. But what do you have to get there? I don't know. I have multiple kids. I've got a full-time job. I have volunteer work on the weekends. If I'm going to do that, I need 4 weeks vacation on a deserted island to seek the Lord. Don't say that. He'll shipwreck you. Ask Paul. But I have I have a 20-minute lunch break and 2 minutes whenever I use the restroom. You need a steak, but you have crumbs to give. So what do? You look at what you have and you say, here's what I have, but what is this compared to what I need? This is nothing compared to what I need. But still, Andrew brought it up to Jesus, saying there's a lad here. He has 5 barley loaves and 2 fish. But what are they for so many people? Jesus, we have nothing. I don't know what you want us to really do here. But look at Jesus' answer. And this is the turning point for this whole thing. In verse 18, he said, bring them here to me. Bring them here to me. And this is the most important verse in this entire passage, because everything else is for nothing if this meager meal is not brought to Jesus. If this food is not given to him and placed in his hands, the miracle doesn't happen. But you start with what you do have. That's step 1. And then step 2 is you bring it to Jesus. Notice Jesus didn't tell them, you're right, it's not enough. What are they among so many? And Jesus goes, it's nothing, you're right. So go into town, spend everything that we have, hire as many carts as you need, and haul it back as fast as you can to feed these people. The application of that version of the story would be do better, try harder, and everything depends on you. There's a callback there. You like that? From 4 weeks ago. But instead of that, we get this. The disciples say, well, Jesus, here's what we have to work with. And they shrug and say, but it doesn't seem like it's enough to be worth anything. And Jesus says, bring it here to me. In one commentator, unknown, he says, small things are not always contemptible. It all depends on the hands in which they are. Jesus says, you have nothing? Then bring me your nothing. Jesus has been in the business of creating something out of nothing since the very beginning. Genesis 1:1, God created the heavens and the earth. God creates, ex nihilo, out of nothing comes something when it's in the hands of God, when it is surrendered to him in faith, no matter how small or non-existent what you have to give is. Like, Lord, I need help. I don't have the wisdom to deal with this problem. Well, then bring your wisdom here to me. Or, Lord, I'm weak. I don't have any strength to deal with this, to make it through this. Then bring what strength you have to me. Lord, I want to spend more time with you. I want to know you better, but I have like 2 minutes to spend with you in between cry fests and making meals and meal planning and changing diapers and everything. Then bring those few minutes here to me. I truly believe, because I've seen it in my own life, that many Christians have many breadcrumb opportunities to meet with God, learn from God, or to serve God, but we pass them up because we ourselves have deemed them too insignificant and unworthy of our time. And had Andrew done that with the food, then this miracle wouldn't have happened. We might see the task, throw up our hands, and we say, I want to know you better, but why even read the Bible if I have 4 minutes in between the time when I get up and my kids get up and demand breakfast? Why pray when I only get peace and quiet when I'm already half asleep on the couch? Or why tell that person about Jesus when someone else could do it infinitely better than me? Isn't it better just to push them off to someone else? Or why meet with the Lord if the only time I have to do it is when I'm driving and I'm going to be distracted anyway? So what's the point of trying? Small things are not always contemptible, but it all depends on the hands in which they are. And if we never give God an opportunity to work in the things that we have deemed too small, then we never get to see it multiplied to the degree of thousands. And we will never see God display what he's capable of in our lives. We'll only ever see our efforts and not his. And his are much more impressive. It reminds me of 1 Corinthians 1:26. And it says, for consider your calling, brethren. For there were not many wise according to the flesh, not many mighty, not many noble, but God has chosen the foolish things of the world to shame the wise. And God has chosen the weak things of the world to shame the things which are strong. And the base things of the world and the despised God has chosen, the things that are not, so that he may nullify the things that are, so that no man may boast before God. But by his doing you are in Christ Jesus, who became to us wisdom from God and righteousness and sanctification and redemption, so that just as it is written, let him who boasts, boast in the Lord. Brief intermission, please. God specifically chooses to work through the meager, the small, the weak, the unintelligent, so that he can work through unhindered by our pride. And it causes people to be awestruck at what just happened. And it causes people to turn their attention to God. And in Acts 4:13 is an awesome example of this. Acts 4:13, it says, "Now, as they observed the confidence of Peter and John and understood that they were uneducated and untrained men, they were amazed and began to recognize them as having been with Jesus." See that connection? And they don't get to boast in their abilities, just as the disciples, they don't get to now boast in having hauled a year's worth of food from the villages to the lakeside to feed everyone, but they get to boast how Jesus enabled them to feed everyone. All they did was they took what they had, they gave it to Jesus, and then they obeyed what he told them to do with it. And that's step 3, by the way. And you look how he blessed it in 19. Ordering the people to sit down on the grass, he took the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, and looking up toward heaven, he blessed the food, and breaking the loaves, he gave them to the disciples, and the disciples gave them to the crowds. I love that the first thing that Jesus does when he's about to work is he makes everyone sit. You have 5,000 plus hungry people wanting to hear teaching. You have your 12 disciples scrambling and discussing with each other how they're going to get this food. Jesus is handed a tiny meal, and he goes, "Okay, everyone just sit, because I'm about to work." Charles Spurgeon said this, and I just love the picture that he gave. He said, "Our blessed master has glorious leisure, because he is always punctual. Late people are in a hurry, but he, being never late, never hurries." Like it said when he talked to Philip, he already knew what he was going to do from the beginning. So there's no rush here. There is peace. And seeing this happen, my mind instantly went to Philippians 4, 6, and 7, which reads, "Be anxious for nothing, but in everything, by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God, and the peace of God, which surpasses all comprehension, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus." And Jesus instantly takes all the pressure out of the situation, and we see the peace of God in action. When the reins have been handed over to him, and the provision portion of this is no longer up to us, then he'll do the work, starting with what we have to give. Something large or nearly anything at all. Jesus looks towards heaven, he blesses the food, and he breaks the bread. And John 6:11 tells us specifically that Jesus gave thanks for it. And he thanked God for what he had. And you're looking at what he's breaking, these tiny barley loaves and these tiny fish, but he's thanking God still for this meager and pathetic meal in the face of a crowd that it needs to feed. And one more Spurgeon quote, and I promise no more. He's just so good. He says, "For 5 little cakes and 2 fish, Christ gave thanks to the Father." Apparently a meager cause for praise, but Jesus knew what he could make of them, and therefore gave thanks for what they would presently accomplish. God loves us, says Augustine, for what we are becoming and being sanctified. Christ gave thanks for these trifles because he saw whereunto they would grow. The disciples were not necessarily so quick to be grateful for the discovery of this tiny meal, but they soon would be. And if we can learn the potential in the small, if God's hand is in it, then perhaps we too will be able to recognize and be grateful for these breadcrumb of opportunities in our lives. So Jesus breaks it down. He gives it to the disciples to give to the crowds. And you notice that Jesus didn't make the food appear in people's pockets, or it wasn't like a daytime talk show. And he's like, "Everyone, check under your seats," right? Like you have whatever. Instead, he actually enables the disciples to do what he told them to do. He didn't say, "You give them something to eat." And they said, "We can't, this is all we have." And he goes, "You're right, I'll give them something to eat," and then distributes it himself. Jesus deliberately wanted the disciples to work alongside him and to be able to obey what he told them to do and to reap the blessing of being a working hand in this miracle. When it comes to serving the Lord, this is a very important part to remember. We are distributors of his power, not manufacturers. If we give what we have to him, then he will bless it, utilize it, and even allow us to glean and benefit from it. And if 5 loaves and 2 fish are enough to feed the 5,000 plus people, then how much could the 5 minutes in the Word and the 2 minutes in prayer during a hectic day produce in you? If you feel tired, exhausted, empty, and far from God, and you feel like it's never the right time for him to work, then begin giving what you do have to him. It's not up to us to make something out of nothing. That's God's business, and it always has been. We just need to be faithful in what you do have. If you have much, give much. But if you don't have much, give what you have. Start with what you have, bring it to Jesus, and obey what he tells you to do, and then he will enable you to do it. So let's go to the second to last verse here. Or actually, we'll do the last 2 verses, 20 and 21. And they all ate and were satisfied. They picked up what was left over of the broken pieces, 12 full baskets. There were about 5,000 men who ate, besides women and children. So remember how it said in those first few verses that Jesus and the disciples were so busy that they didn't even have time to eat? Well, now, by allowing the Lord to work and by working alongside him and bringing what they had, the disciples were also fed. John specifically mentions not just satisfied, but they were able to eat as much as they wanted. And the disciples had to trust him. They had to do a little bit of work, but that rest that Jesus told them about and that he invited them to come and take was so much better than they could have anticipated. Instead of getting onto a boat and being alone with your thoughts about John the Baptist and eating whatever scraps that they found to stave off hunger, they're now sitting in a group, eating as much as they wanted, alongside thousands of people that all came to hear their master, and they got to see and participate in and benefit from Jesus' compassion and power through the multiplication of what little was brought to him. And who wouldn't take that over a cold night alone in your thoughts? These moments when God does something great with little to nothing but trust and obedience, they become not just a benefit to those around us, but to us as well. And they become truly faith-building moments. And even extending beyond that, like imagine that boy's parents' shock when he comes home and he tells them what happened to his dinner. And naturally, the last part of verse 20, 12 baskets full of leftovers. Probably nothing significant about that number at all. Who could those have possibly been for? I'm just really racking my brain about it. God is so gracious with his disciples, saying, come and rest. And now they do get to rest, and they get to sit, and they get to hear him talk, and they get to eat as much as they want, and then they get to carry around the leftovers. Jesus demonstrated here what he is willing and able to do with tiny crumbs that are given over to him, believing that he can make use of them for our benefit and his glory. And when we give Christ what we have, we never lose. Because guess what? Jesus is still in the business of feeding hungry people. If we come to him hungry for more of him, hungry for the bread of life, but we only have crumbs to work with, don't ignore the crumbs. Bring them to him anyway, no matter how insignificant they may seem. The 2 minutes that you have to spend in prayer while you're brushing your teeth before you rush off for work, They can set your mind on the Lord, and the Lord can give you a word or a verse that can carry you through the rest of that day. The 10 minutes that you have before you fall asleep on the couch after cleaning up after 4 kids, that's not specific to anyone in this room, but God can teach you so much through that, even if it seems impossible. But if the crumbs are never brought in faith, then they will never be multiplied into a meal. So bring your nothing to Jesus and watch what he can do with it.